Our gun rights landscape just got hit with an earthquake, and if you cherish the Second Amendment, you're going to want to hear every detail. Something almost unimaginable is happening at the federal level, and it could indefinitely reshape how firearms are regulated in this country. In this video, we'll talk about Kash Patel, the newly appointed director of the FBI, who is now confirmed as the acting director of the ATF too, what that means for our gun rights, and why the media and anti-gun politicians are in full-blown panic mode. Kash Patel was sworn in as FBI director after his confirmation by the Senate Judiciary Committee, despite fierce opposition from Democrats who took issue with his loyalty to President Trump and his so-called radical approach to law enforcement. That in itself was a seismic event, but the really shocking twist came when rumors spread that Kash Patel will be the new ATF director. Shortly after, anti-2A news outlets like CNBC and ABC reported that Kash Patel would also be stepping in as the acting head of the ATF. That's right. One person is now in charge of two of the most powerful law enforcement agencies in the country, agencies that have repeatedly butted heads over jurisdiction, policy, and approach. The ATF in particular has long been the bane of our existence, thanks to its rule changes, regulatory overreach, and willingness to enforce sweeping mandates that often skirt the intent of the Second Amendment. Under the Biden administration, the ATF moved aggressively to regulate or ban things like pistol braces, expand the definition of who qualifies as a firearms dealer, and add new rules about homemade or ghost guns. These stupid rules are nothing short of blatant attacks on law-abiding gun owners. The ATF's top legal counsel, Pamela Hicks, was recently fired under Attorney General Pam Bondi's orders, supposedly for targeting gun owners. And now with Kash Patel at the helm, it appears that these anti-gun efforts will not just slow down but could be overturned altogether. Patel has been described by mainstream media outlets as an extremist when it comes to gun rights. Gun control groups fear him, labeling him as someone who could systematically dismantle the ATF's regulatory powers. Gun Owners of America, on the other hand, celebrated his confirmation as a decisive victory for those who stand firmly behind the Second Amendment. The most important question is he pro-gun? Let's see. The best window into the guy's mindset comes from his Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, where Senator Welch, a known anti-Second Amendment Democrat, questioned him at length. When pressed on the constitutionality of background checks, Patel refused to endorse them beyond what the Supreme Court has already determined. Rather than promising to impose new federal restrictions, he simply said the Constitution and Supreme Court rulings are the law of the land. This might sound neutral at first, but when you peel back the layers, it's pretty telling. He's not looking to expand background checks or champion universal checks that anti-gun politicians are always pushing for. Senator Welch then switched the subject to a question about civilian ownership of machine guns, an especially hot topic for gun grabbers. Patel's answer was nuanced but revealing. He stated that whatever the court says regarding the Second Amendment is what goes. Again, he didn't talk about wanting to ban them or wanting to go beyond any current Supreme Court precedent. For those of us who want the government to respect the actual text of the Second Amendment and existing case law, that's exactly the kind of response we want to hear from an official set to oversee both the FBI and the ATF. What's fascinating is that Democrats in the Senate hearing tried to tie Patel to Gun Owners of America, a staunchly pro-2A group. They always malign as extreme. They made it sound like having any association with GOA was a scarlet letter, but from a pro-2A perspective, that's not a negative mark at all. Quite the opposite. It suggests that Patel is aligned with an organization that's dedicated to defending our rights from erosion. In fact, Gun Owners of America hailed his appointment as a massive win for patriots nationwide, which only stoked the media's fears that the ATF might soon lose its power to impose burdensome regulations on gun owners. Imagine what could happen if Patel truly shakes up the ATF. For years, conservatives have floated the idea of abolishing the ATF outright. They've also criticized the agency for being manipulated by political administrations that want to clamp down on firearms without passing new laws. Instead of letting Congress debate and vote on gun control, the ATF often reinterprets regulations, thereby circumventing the legislative process. Under the Biden administration, there was a flurry of such reinterpretations, leaving gun owners confused and at risk of felony charges for equipment they had legally purchased and possessed for years. Now, we've got a new boss in town, one who has already, according to major news sources, overseen the firing of top ATF legal staffers accused of targeting law-abiding Americans. That alone is an enormous sign that changes are coming fast. You might ask, could this lead to the complete dismantling of the ATF? It's too early to be certain, but if President Trump's executive order to review and reverse Biden-era firearm regulations is going to have any teeth, Patel is clearly positioned to implement it. That executive order, which called for a thorough review of all Second Amendment infringements that crept in over the past 4 years, is set to expire soon. So if any sweeping modifications or repeals are going to occur, we should expect them in the next couple of weeks. Before we dive further into what might happen next, if this video was helpful in any way, please like, share, subscribe, and click on the bell icon for more of these videos. Getting these updates out to more people is crucial, especially now when so much is in flux. We need a united front of informed gun owners to hold Washington accountable and ensure these Pro-2A changes actually happen. So, what exactly are we looking at in the short term? Well, for one, there's a lot of speculation that the ATF might walk back or halt enforcement of certain Biden-era rules, like the infamous pistol brace ruling. Gun owners found themselves stuck with an ultimatum: register their braces or face felony charges. That fiasco could be undone by a director who genuinely respects the right to keep and bear arms. Another possibility is more transparency and consistency when it comes to licensing federal firearm dealers. In recent years, the ATF has been hitting small sellers or hobbyists with ambiguous standards, effectively strangling the private sale of firearms. Patel, in his new role, might clarify or weaken these guidelines, reverting authority back to where it belongs, with the American people and their elected officials, not bureaucrats. We also have to consider the frightening possibility that in combining the leadership of the FBI and ATF under one man, the federal government could create a super agency down the road. If a future anti-gun administration exploits that structure, it could lead to an even more robust crackdown on firearms. But from where we stand right now, with a Pro-2A president calling the shots and a Pro-2A individual leading both the FBI and the ATF, it appears that we may finally see a federal power shift that benefits lawful gun owners instead of punishing them. How did Kash Patel even get here? He was already in the crosshairs of Democrats and the mainstream media during his FBI confirmation because of his involvement in uncovering what many believe to be biased or politically motivated investigations within the Bureau. They labeled him a Trump loyalist, implying he wouldn't be an impartial law enforcement leader. But from a Second Amendment perspective, impartiality means respecting the Constitution as written, not bending to the political whims of whichever party is in power. That's exactly the stance Patel seems to take. If the Supreme Court says it's constitutional, then it stands. And if it's unconstitutional, then the agencies he leads shouldn't be enforcing it. Throughout the Senate hearings, Senator Peter Welch grilled Patel, bringing up the usual anti-gun talking points about gun violence and the ATF's role in preventing it. Patel responded by affirming that he recognizes the background check system is in place for a reason, but he never promised to expand it. He didn't call it unconstitutional, but he also didn't champion universal checks that so many in Congress seem keen on imposing. In essence, he signaled that he's not going to trash every aspect of firearm regulation, but he's certainly not going to rubber stamp new ones, especially those that appear to overstep constitutional boundaries. The question of whether Patel is Pro-2A seems to answer itself when you look at his track record, affiliations, and posture. Although he hasn't come out waving a big banner saying, "I'm pro-gun," his willingness to respect Supreme Court precedent and his refusal to cave in to pressure from anti-gun politicians speaks volumes. Not to mention the fact that groups like Gun Owners of America, who are very discerning about whom they support, have publicly praised him. Even in the short time since he took the reins of the FBI, we've seen a glimpse of what might be in store for the ATF. As we approach the all-important date of March 9th, when President Trump's executive order calling for the reversal of Biden-era gun control measures reaches its 30-day mark, rumors are swirling about what Patel might do. Some insiders suggest he's preparing to roll back any regulation that wasn't explicitly passed by Congress. That could mean a major victory for all of us who have been saying that the ATF has no business making up rules on the fly. It's possible that red tape around certain accessories, like stabilizing braces or uppers, might be removed. And while this all sounds great for 2A supporters, it's practically sending anti-gun activists and left-leaning politicians into meltdown mode. We should also talk about the potential for lawsuits. You can be sure that if Patel starts dismantling ATF regulations, the anti-gun side will take the issue to court. We may see states or activist organizations filing injunctions, claiming that any rollback in enforcement somehow leads to more gun violence. Expect the same rhetoric we always hear, that relaxing restrictions only empowers criminals. But as Pro-2A advocates, we know the truth is more nuanced. Lawful Americans have the right to bear arms, and punishing them for the actions of criminals is both unconstitutional and ineffective. Even though we stand to gain a lot under Patel's leadership, the next election cycle could shift everything again. If a rapidly anti-gun administration comes into power, they might leverage the consolidated authority of an FBI ATF mega agency for their own agenda. That's why it's crucial that we stay vigilant, support Pro-2A politicians, and continue to educate the public about why the ATF has been historically problematic. It's also important to remember that while Patel is in a position of power now, the ATF is still a federal agency that's been around for a long time. Dismantling or transforming it won't happen overnight, but if there's ever been a moment where the foundation is ripe for change, it's this one. None of this is to say that the ATF will just disappear tomorrow. But if Patel applies even half the grit and determination he showed when investigating FBI misconduct, we could witness a complete overhaul of how firearm regulations are enforced, and possibly how they're even created. That includes re-examining the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, ensuring it's used as intended rather than as a stepping stone to universal checks, and scrutinizing any policies that penalize the private transfer or manufacture of firearms. We're living in a unique time, one where the Constitution might finally be upheld in a way that has seemed impossible for decades. Of course, we need to keep the pressure on. The anti-gun media will not give Kash Patel a moment's rest. They'll harp on every minor misstep or gray area to paint him as dangerous or incompetent. They've already dredged up all sorts of controversies from his past, from his connections to the so-called deep state investigations to his loyalty to Trump. But from our standpoint, loyalty to the Constitution is what really matters, and all signs point to Patel being ready to stand up for it. If the idea of a more constitutional ATF excites you, if the possibility of rolling back oppressive rules about pistol braces and do-it-yourself firearms gives you a sense of relief, then you have a reason to remain engaged in this fight. We can't simply let Kash Patel do it all on his own. We need to keep our voices loud, show public support for any moves he makes to respect our rights, and hold our representatives accountable so they don't slip in new backdoor regulations. This is a moment for Second Amendment advocates to unite and push forward, not sit back and hope everything magically improves. We're near a turning point in American firearms policy. The question is whether we'll seize the opportunity or allow the anti-gun crowd to disrupt the momentum. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay proactive. Thanks so much for watching. If this video was helpful in any way, please like, share, subscribe, and click on the bell icon for more of these videos. It helps this channel grow and ensures that more people stay updated on critical changes affecting their constitutional rights. A strong and informed community is the best defense we have against any government overreach. Remember, the Second Amendment is not a suggestion, it's a guarantee. Let's see what Kash Patel does with the ATF in the coming days and weeks.